our final story tonight is a bit of a niche one. We're stepping away from politics for a second, but this can be political in a different way. Maybe not governmental political, but political in its field kind of way, in which there are opinions on both sides. My favorite thing to hear. On the topic of ADHD, which I think this has been a topic that has dominated the media on and off every couple of months for the last 25-ish years, basically, since everyone during a pandemic realized that there might be something wrong with them because they can't function. And the rise of social media and everyone talking about their cognitive issues. And obviously with the rise in addiction to social media and the sorts, there's a lot of questions around, does ADHD exist, or is it just social media addiction, and what is this and what is that, and everyone has autism now, and everyone's neurodivergent, and everyone has different brains, and oh my god.
You're telling me the people that bullied me for being different are also autistic? I don't know about that one.
So there's a lot going on in the space. Lots of thoughts and feelings. But it's come back again. The conversation's come back around again. Is adult ADHD, is it overdiagnosed? So a new podcast by Midiyama Kamo and someone had his name in there before. It doesn't say. Why can't you write the names of the hosts in the bloody thing? I think Cyber Goblin had it before, and I forgot to star it. Gosh darn it. Cyber, help me out.
I'm getting there. Thank you. Mark Kreisel.
That's the one. Mike Kreisel. Have a new podcast. And so they get Guy Williams, who did a documentary on TVNZ a few months ago, which I actually really appreciated.
It was really cool.
Guy had not been diagnosed with ADHD. He was actually doing the documentary for his sister. I think his sister got diagnosed. And in the process of doing so, everyone was like pointing the finger at him, being like, bruh.
Yeah. Dude, you should probably be in first place for this diagnosis.
Yeah. Pot calling the kettle black a little bit. So that was quite an interesting, I think it's on TVNZ if anyone wants to go and watch it. So he's on the panel talking about his lived experience. Anika Mboa is on this panel as well, talking about her lived experience. And the reason that I wanted to show the clinical side of this with the two clinicians at the end is probably where it's the most interesting and controversial. But I do want to go through Guy and Anika's comments as well, because specifically they touch on a few things that are a little bit kind of back up a little bit of what the clinician's going to talk about, which is kind of like the pathologizing side of mental illness and behaviors and things, and so the over-pathologizing people's behaviors versus real clinical need for diagnoses and things like that, and the help and the benefits that come from the likes of medication and knowing who you are and how you function on a clinical level at least. But yeah, so let's jump in with a guy who talks about sort of one of the things that kind of lead into why he was very sort of ADHD doesn't exist in the beginning, because he was someone who had the experience of choosing the right paths in life and not seeing the same resistance that perhaps others who have the same diagnosis saw, so that he was not masking, but he was flying under the radar for a lot of his life. And that just came down to his decisions that he made about his lifestyle, his career choice, and he talks a bit about this, which I think is quite it's very interesting. Go on, Guy, everyone's favorite.
I always thought I was kind of strong with the nature over nurture. For me, I was a very capable student with decent grades all the way through, and I was well behaved at school. If you look at my reports, apart from the occasional joke or prank or whatever. And when I got to 19 or 20, I realized that everyone has social anxiety, so you may as well be the goof at the party. I became a comedian, and my whole career I've been encouraged to be loud and obnoxious and say the wrong thing, and so I felt like I've developed the skill of ADHD.
That actually makes sense.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Nika might be the same. Like, it's like you started just as a musician, and then you did so well in interviews that you parlayed into a career in media and stuff. I was like, did you feel like you played it up or not, or was it always inside you?
It's me. I never play anything up.
You've never changed?
If anything, I read a script and I take what I want from it, and then the rest of it's me.
You said it's your superpower?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well,
And this kind of feeds into that again of this Anika's response here is more like the thing that it's kind of probably become quite popular in social media is thinking of your mental health or your behaviors, especially things like autism and ADHD, which are very behavioral based. Thinking of them as your superpower, looking at the positives that brings to your life as opposed to the negatives that it brings. And this is what Anika speaks about here. And again, it mimics the same thing of the industries that these two have gone into, the entertainment industry, especially sort of being a comedian, being in music. Like, these are very free-flowing, non-rigid. I think Guy says, like, if you would, like, you don't find many ADHDers in the accounting business, for example, or as lawyers and things. Maybe lawyers, maybe a little bit, because then they're very 9 to 5 rigid, which doesn't really work with their types of brains. So they've been very lucky that they've gone into this. But I'll let Anika speak to this.
I have confidence. I never had social anxiety. I believed in myself 150%. But I come from solo mum, on the dole, no money, no clothes, like poor as anything. But I still had confidence to do exactly what I wanted. Yeah. And I think that's a superpower.
Yeah. That's ADHD.
Yeah, because I probably foolishly believe that I can do anything. Like, people,
it's not foolish. I think you've proven it over and over.
A lot of people do think it's foolish because if you're too confident, you I don't know. It's like that tall poppy syndrome. I was always told that I'll never make it. I'm a stupid Mary. You know, all these things against me. But because I have ADHD, I just didn't believe them. I was like,
so for you, this is a.
So the next wee bit that she jumps into here is something that not many people, I think this is probably the most important thing that she talks about, or this whole discussion talks about, is the intersectionality of women who have ADHD and also women in their hormones, as they not only just their monthly hormones but their decade hormones as well, which have been women in ADHD has been basically never really researched until, like, I think there was a study between
recently,
like 2000s and 2010. It might have even started in 2010 around women with ADHD. I think it's like the biggest, like, proper clinical study on it. But we've still got a lot of blind spots around or research that backs up clinicians who kind of have an understanding, and because of what they're seeing in their practice, around women, how they react to the typical treatment of ADHD, which is your stimulants, how their hormones affect how the stimulants work on their bodies, and then over the decades you also have things like, as Anika goes into here, menopause and perimenopause, and how that again has a lot of correlations in the symptoms that you get, like sort of the forgetfulness and the memory issues and the cognitive issues that kind of come from perimenopause, how they interact with your typical ADHD symptoms as well. And then also motherhood plays a part in this. There's not a lot of this conversation. There's not enough research out there. There's a lot of conversation around it, but there needs to be more research, and this is going to take time. Obviously, you can't build up what I think this has been around for 70 odd years for boys, and for adults even less than that, and then for women even less than that. And for adult women, even less than that. So, yeah. But
Yeah.
I'll let Anika speak to this because I think it's kind of important as well.
Well,
people
okay.
celebrating it online.
I actually think there's more important things to think about than thinking it's a fad. I think perimenopause, what I'm going through, what you've gone through, I think that's more important and actually messes you up worse than ADHD. So
That's interesting.
Yeah. I just need a PA basically to run my life, because that's the only thing that is a downfall to me is my memory and my impulsivity to want to do things, but then when the time comes, I can't see them through. I've got an acting class tonight, don't want to go, you know? Bought some knitting needles, spent 10 minutes trying to fucking knit on or purl on, and I just gave up. If I'm not hyper-focused, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Only if it's my one desire and one, I'll die for my passion.
But also people with ADHD, I think, I'm not an expert, so don't quote me on anything I say about ADHD, but I think you're attracted to loose, flimsy, comedy and music careers, as opposed to, we're not going to be lawyers or accountants.
Hell no.
Yeah. Can I?
So that's sort of the lived experience part of the interview, and then we'll go into some of the clinician stuff. Any speak to that and add to it there, Magenta? I know you've definitely a lot more technically, academically expertised in this.
I mean, this might be one of my special interests, but I mean, there's quite a few things. I took some notes because I was like, "There's no way I'm going to remember all of this." By the time we get to this part, but I mean, there's one thing is that I've just noticed in general. I wouldn't say it's just ADHD, but I think neurodiversity, neurodivergent people in general, gravitate towards the arts. If you look at a lot of your favorite comedians. Honestly, the one thing that, the glass shattering moment you have when it's the glass shatters and you can't unsee it, the amount of different, content creators that I follow who I'm realizing are just an autistic person and an ADHD person hanging out and vibing. It's a lot more. Once you start noticing it, it's there. And it's because, camouflaging, also known as masking, that is a tool that a lot of us develop in childhood through basically being bullied, traumatized, especially ADHD kids are often vilified and are often given this stupid fucking diagnosis that shouldn't exist, but oppositional defiance disorder. A lot of ADHD kids get given, and autistic kids actually too, because, they want to do what they want to do. So there's already that kind of drifting towards the creative. Obviously, those things tend to have more flexible hours, also tend to be a lot later, and a lot of ADHD and autistic people seem to have, there's a good portion of us who are very much nighttime people. We live in the nighttime. I think, however, there was one thing, I don't super love going hardcore into a superpower narrative. I personally think we need to have a little bit of an in-between of you can lean into what work, my autism and shit like that is where a lot of my research and a lot of the things that I bring to the show come from, because I go into these big, holes of I need to understand all of this and I need to tell everyone about it. But you can also, I feel if you lean too hard into the superhero narrative, it kind of discredits the fact that we are disabled, not because of the fact that our brains are broken or there's anything wrong with us. It's that we're disabled in the society that has been built around us because it wasn't built with us in mind. Which is another reason why I'm yes, whether you want to call it, even if we just went into neurodivergent and neurotypical, there's a very clear existence of these two camps, because there's also studies that they've found literal children, if you just put autistic kids with other kids without knowing that kid's autistic, they've found, I believe it was within about, I think, 5 to 8 minutes, kids start treating autistic children differently because they obviously notice subtle differences in how they are. That is something we've already found. I also find it funny when people go, oh, ADHD and autism, it's just a fad. That is the same thing that they said when I was like in high school, when people were kind of, I guess, queerness was becoming much more of a conversation. Obviously, we're trying to get queer marriage to actually be fucking legalized. Like, I had my own mother tell me that being bisexual is just a phase. And I mean, the bisexuality, yeah, I went to pansexual. So technically the bisexual was a phase, but not in the way that she thought. And so I guess I just feel like it's the same thing with when people just want to basically discredit and go, oh, it's just a fad, it's just a fad. It's like, no, I also feel like some of those people, they're probably feeling a little added and like maybe they don't want to confront some kind of confronting feelings that all of these, new informations are bringing up. But yeah, yeah, there you go. That's my thoughts.
Nice. I think what you're just saying there kind of leads into the clinician. Sorry, someone asked what clinicians means. I can't remember. I know one of them is a practicing psychiatrist. I'm not sure. I think the other guy is more in the research space. But they have a very interesting argument for does ADHD exist and does it not? And I think it's the kind of like, do we look at it as a do we pathologize it, and the treatments, do they work, and all of this sort of stuff. And I think there's good things made on both sides, but I'm going to start at the very end because I think he asked the right question at the end of the guy who's the skeptic of it, and then we'll kind of move back into some of the questions. It's actually quite hard to pick out points because they kind of speak over each other a lot. Like, it's just constantly speaking over each other, and then it gets really medical as well. And so I'm just like,
very neurodivergent sounding conversation. Then that's just the fucking Discord chat.
They're very, let's just say they're both very passionate about their sides of it. And I think this makes sense because we are talking about real people's outcomes and things like that. The guy who's in the studio is he based here in New Zealand? And the guy who's not in the studio has an English accent, but I'm not 100% sure if he's from or based in England. But he has some issues with some of the points made. Anyways, right, let's jump into the last little bit, and then so this is the last question that's asked of the skeptic, and then we'll jump back to some of the questions. If I can find the right timestamp. Is it going to be good to me? Yeah. Good.
There's plenty of stigma around epilepsy.
So we do have to wrap
I would actually want to ask Sami, what is your definition of mental disorder, Sami?
We literally don't know what we're talking about when it comes to mental disorders because it's all subjective. That's the point I've been trying to make.
So you're saying there is no mental disorder? Is this back to the old anti-psychiatry from the 70s? Is that what we're talking about here?
I'm saying it is conceptual.
Let me jump in again. Epilepsy is conceptual. The ILAE revises the definition every 3 or 4 years or so. Are you saying epilepsy doesn't exist because the definition gets revised? We went
no.
Having to have two seizures to having one seizure plus, etc. Now, and I would remind you, I'm measuring attention in these people when I make a diagnosis. I'm not just getting them to tick boxes. I'm seeing what their attention is actually like, what their cognitive functions are like. And it can be quite surprising. I agree that if you're not measuring anything, it's all constructed and you haven't got anything to hang your hat on. But if you do, are you saying that doesn't matter? Neuropsychological testing is irrelevant.
There is no shortcut to an individualized approach, that lumping things together, because actually that's something that I agree. I think we should be doing specific profiling, and I do cognitive profiling and have done that, because there is no shortcut. But ADHD is itself a constructed concept that leads to stereotyped ideas, and I think I don't think we should be using it at all.
And Greg?
If we found another diagnostic term that people took a bit more seriously and led to better processes, actually, I'm in favour of that.
So, a lot there. So, as far as I understand from the sort of spaces that I've kind of run within and sort of understood from the clinical side of things and the arguments for pathologizing and not pathology, all that sort of thing, is I don't even know what Magenta, you speak. What have you got?
I mean, this is all I could think
yes.
when that guy was talking.
Yeah.
Hopefully that kickstarts your brain.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that is the thing, right? I mean, any set of human behaviors is conceptual. I mean, the fact that we can look at someone like Guy Williams, for example, and say, well, here's your list of things. And even he himself is like, it's quite a spectrum. There's a lot of things. There's like crazy driving. There's addiction. There's all of these other things that are like behavioral or you can categorize this kind of brain structure as, and they call it ADHD, whatever. But when they all kind of line up, it is a conceptual thing that it kind of becomes something. And if it's been clinicized as ADHD and treated under that umbrella, but you could argue that that's just kind of a brain type that some people have, and like us as humans recognize that kind of brain type. I mean, the perfect example of this is that people who are neurodivergent or divergent, who are not your neurotypical people, we all seem to find each other. So there is something innately human about it that's not just like my best friend, for example, right? Grew up with her, came from very similar but different backgrounds. We kind of just found each other. She had she had the Card Captors Cloud book.
Yes.
In the first couple of days of school, and I was just like, I fucking love this anime.
Hell yeah.
And we bonded over that. Little did I know, I had my wedding a few months ago. She was my maid of honor, and like I didn't know this, and we hadn't kind of like not fallen out, but we just sort of like hadn't really seen much of each other over the last 10 years. She has ADHD, so like we're two peas in a pod. And like we just seem to have found each other, and like we're tight as anything, even though we haven't spent much time with each other in the last 10 years. Like we fit together perfectly. And like yourself, Magenta, when you put your name forward for the Friday host and things, I was like, I like this person. I think we can vibe. And then like our first little chat that we had offline, I was like, we vibing. Like it's just we just seem to find each other, and like it works,
Right. I mean, even I think I was talking to Chewie's wife, and she was saying that her and Chewie had conversations about how me and him are really similar. Guess what we have in common, guys? It's not just an ADD in that boy. I'm telling you that now. Game recognizes game. But that's the thing is, like, we find each other, like that study I was talking about in kids literally, like, that's half the time how kids become the target of being bullied in school. It's because you notice those small, subtle differences, that the vibes are off. And yeah, that's how we end up. Yeah, literally, like, most of us end up being the weird kid who is often a little bit eccentric or a nerd. Nerd to me is just synonymous with neurodivergent. Like, someone's a nerd, yeah, neurodivergent, probably. But, and that's the thing is, I think, if anything, focusing on this whole, like, trying to be like, oh, well, it's just a social construct, which we then stigmatize. He's kind of putting the blame in the wrong place. I think what we need to talk about is the fact that we as people keep fucking stigmatizing people for being different. And we as a society need to actually start having conversations about how we need to change how we behave. Because the thing is, neurodivergent people have always existed. How the fuck do you think before computers, or even before like proper technology, we had fucking encyclopedias published by a single person? You're telling me that a human who will sit there and write books in painful detail on the most like random thing is just, No, they'll probably just a neuro. No, they probably were a neurodivergent. We have always existed, and it's about kind of focusing on the fact that we've been underdiagnosing. So you know what? It's probably going to look like we're overdiagnosing at the moment because we've been doing such a shit fucking job at it so far. Like, we do need to have some base categories. Like, it sucks. We'd love that we didn't have to be put in boxes, but we do need some basic labels so we can kind of have an idea of what we're dealing with. You know? You don't want to pretend something's not a potato and then all of a sudden you go to bloody make your roast and next thing you know you've got some weird other vegetable in there. Like, we need those umbrellas for a reason. They don't have to be boxes, they can be umbrellas. I think that's probably a
Spectrums.
better way to see it. Yeah,
Spectrums.
exactly.
The next wee bit that I managed to pull out of this, I think there's a lot of talking over each other again in this conversation. But it's talking about, again, sort of pushing against this idea that it's just a construct, which it is a construct, but then there's sort of like, it then goes beyond a construct into a clinical condition in which needs to be, in order to function in society. And like Magenta was just saying, maybe it's society that needs to change, not us. But unfortunately, it's the system that we're in, and sometimes you do need clinical help in order to mitigate the side effects that can come from living in a world that doesn't work for you, and you end up actually with other comorbidities, addiction issues, all those sorts of things. But yeah, we'll listen to I believe this is the psychiatrist talking about the medical side of things and treatment of ADHD. If I'm got the right timestamp.
The evidence does show that out of the psychiatric medications used for mental health problems, stimulants for ADHD is the most effective intervention. Much more effective than antipsychotics for schizophrenia, much more effective than antidepressants for depression if it's defined well enough.
Right.
Sami, if we stop diagnosing ADHD, what do you do for those people who are struggling to focus, hold down a job, or even manage their daily lives?
I think there's a lot of things that we can do. I think the first thing that we do is that I'd like to see happen is for us to be able to accept each other as we are, rather than feeling that in order to find some comfort in who we are, we have to reach out for some sort of label.
There's good evidence that untreated ADHD leads to substance use problems, promotes depression, anxiety, and all that kind of thing. So trying to treat those aspects without treating the underlying disorder is a problem.
No, the evidence is not good on any of that. And I disagree very much about the characterization of amphetamine-like substances as being an effective treatment. And when you look at the long-term outcome studies, a very different picture emerges. Worse outcomes in terms of self-esteem, in terms of socialization. They end up with higher blood pressure. They often end up shorter and lighter. So these are things that come with a lot of side effects.
The issue here is...
I saw lots of expressions in Magenta before we go. I'll continue this wee bit, but yes, thoughts. Like again, it's that kind of thing of like the clinical side of things, and like, yes, if we don't treat it,
he's got some good parts in there. He almost gets it a few moments.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's that talking about like the societal issues. Like, are we just stigmatizing? Are we putting people in boxes? Like I get with this guy who doesn't agree with the label. I get where he's coming from, but I think you have to have. It's not just both sides of the argument. I think it's the same argument. Yeah. It's the same argument of how do we deal with this issue that we as a society have called ADHD.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, my first thought was kind of like, could you imagine a world where neurodivergent people basically didn't have to fucking mask, could just live their goddamn lives and mostly medicate for, say, certain parts of these neurotypes that aren't fun, like meltdowns or hyperfocus, meaning that you don't eat for like a whole day or whatever the fuck. But I genuinely believe that we would see stark decrease in the amount of people needing antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. Because for me, I was always getting diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And I'm like, well, yeah, I am depressed and I am anxious, but they were symptoms of the undiagnosed neurodivergence. Like, imagine if I could live in a world where, like, I probably could go off my antidepressants. Like, that would be dope. That'd be so cool. But the world we have, not so much. And that's just, yeah, I think I agree with the basis of his sentiment, but yeah, there really needs to be a middle ground between the two. Like, the fact that he's trying to say, oh, I don't believe that we should be promoting amphetamines, he can't say that they don't help some people, because that other guy isn't saying, let's just give all ADHD people fucking dexamphetamine or whichever other type. He's saying, like, hey, there are some people that the medication works wonders for, absolutely changes their life, gives them the ability. Like, my best friend, his life has really changed since he got access to ADHD medication, or even just learning that he was ADHD, but then getting the medication on top of that has just absolutely changed everything for not just him, but him and his wife. Like, their relationship, once they learned, like, about, well, both of their neurodiversities, yeah, their lives have just gotten so much better because they can actually identify what's happening, accommodate, all of those things.
We'll listen to another minute of the back and forth between these two, because it's a fascinating interview. If you want to go and look it up, it's on the Herald's YouTube page. You can see the full thing in its full context. But keep going with this wee bit, because they talk a little bit more about the medical side of things. Yeah, it's always fascinating to hear the experts speak.
Is that everything is very individual. So if you've been treating adult ADHD patients for a few decades, you do get a sense of this. So absolutely, there are some patients who should not be treated with stimulants. Some people respond very well to the non-stimulants. There are a range of other options. You shouldn't be using medication without also looking at the behavioural aspects, looking at how people are organising their lives, helping with sleep. The medication is not very effective if people aren't sleeping well, so attention to sleep is very important, etc.
So you're agreeing, you and Sami agree on some basic things. I mean, I hear you saying that you agree that actually there are parts where you don't need to take medication.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I know that you're concerned about is equity in terms of being able to access the help that you need, whether that results in medication or not.
Look, that's right. And this is an important issue because if ADHD is real, which I think it is, because in my patients, I measure their attention.
Do you think it is, or do you know it is?
Well, what's real? You know what I mean? We can go off down a rabbit hole and...
or asking a psychiatrist what's real.
Well, no, if you look at, okay, so is ADHD a natural kind, if we want to go into, proper philosophy? Well, no, it's not, is it? It's a bunch of things lumped together. And so you can't treat everybody with ADHD in the same way.
So how, given that it...
I mean, that kind of brings the two of them to the same point, right? It's mental illness, things like bipolar and things like that, or just neurodivergent perhaps more so. I mean, the easiest ones I think for most people to conceptualize are autism and ADHD, but obviously neurodiversity is very is huge. It's not just a spectrum of things. It's the bubbles of interconnecting things. It's like Venn diagrams on steroids, but if you can think of it that way. But then you also have things like the likes of bipolar, where you have variable moods, and then you also have things like schizophrenia. Again, is kind of a little bit different because then you're going to go into psychosis and things like that. But it's kind of, but then you have anxiety and you have depression. All these are the things that are like, they are natural. A lot of them are natural. Well, they're natural to human beings. Like they are whatever it is, differences in our brains that do make us behave differently.
We need variety. Could you imagine how would we survive without a broad range of thinking and being? And doing. Like, it wouldn't make sense, you know? It wouldn't make sense for everyone to want to sleep on a 9 to 5 schedule, because then who the fuck's going to keep an eye out, you know? Like, if we think back to older times, you know, what were our
The
ancestors
hunter-gatherer.
doing? Not even just like hunter-gatherer, just literally our ancestors. Like, we need diversity. The same way we have biodiversity is really important. Like, diversity in our brains. Like, yeah, it creates some obviously issues, but it's important.
So yeah, it's an interesting conversation to go and have a look at. I think it's worth. I mean, this conversation is going to go on for forever. I think it really comes down to pathologizing neurodiversity and mental health issues versus not pathologizing it, medication versus non-medication.
Well, that's where I feel like that's the problem,
overdiagnosing versus underdiagnosing.
But that's the problem inherently, is like we keep having these, it has to be this way or it has to be that way. Like, where is the little bit of column A, little bit of column B? Like, it's so frustrating. Like, middle grounds, you know, picking bits like the same way. I don't want to be a fucking superhero or an R word. Like, I just want to be a person who struggles with certain things without certain medications. Like, it's frustrating, and the conversation is just not the conversation I think that needs to be had directly. It's close, it's nearly there, but I think they're just missing it a little.
Yeah, but I think he leaves on a good point. It's as a clinician, for example, I think, but just in general, like, we should all look at people as their individuals and look at their individual cases and look at their individual responses to medication, whether or not they want medication or they don't. Like, just it's individualized. Some people want the label, some people don't. Some people disclose it, some people don't. Some people deal with it in different ways, and some people don't.
It helps, some people it doesn't. Like,
it's
if you don't want a label, you don't have to use one. But if people want to use a label to help them, like, live their lives better, fucking let them. My God, it's almost like the pronoun fucking bullshit, just with a different bloody coat of paint, really.